Now listen, let me tell y'all how crazy it is. I can be in the grocery store. I can be in Target. I can be in the dollar store, and I can overhear a couple arguing. And if my husband is with me, he has to tell me, baby, do not go get in their business. I'm asking you for any help, because I truly believe if you just give me 15 minutes with you. Just give me 15 minutes.
Right. We can fix this.
I can help you. He didn't mean that. She didn't mean that. So,
what's up, YouTube and Hallelujah Nation? Hey, we got a great convo for you today. We're talking to licensed therapist Robin May. She's a great friend of the Hallelujah Nation. And if you're not part of the Hallelujah Nation, hit subscribe, share it with all your friends. Hey, when you want to know when we're dropping new content, hit the bell. It's a great conversation. We're going to see you on the other side.
Without further ado, talk show host, licensed therapist, aka Clark Atlanta University graduate, and our good friend. Please welcome Miss Robin May. Mrs. Robin May, what's going on? You're on mute. You're on mute. You gotta come.
There we go.
Now I'm with it. Hey, y'all.
What's up, Robin?
Hey, brothers. I'm excited to dive into this conversation.
I should have added Dallas, Texas, Oak Cliff, because that's how you always come in any room.
Oak Cliff, do you understand me?
Is that what that is?
You had a whole hand motion with it. Did you know that, Chris?
I didn't know the Oak Cliff had a gang symbol. No, I was.
Me neither.
I thought, okay.
But listen, I love that you said behind every good man is an even greater woman. I'm putting some points to that for you. You got some points with that.
Well, look, because we ain't lying. Lee said it during the interview, and I'm going to double down. Besides the grace of God, it was Robin May that, set us straight and on our path of being the fine young men that we are now.
Yes, and I still be cracking the whip every once in a while.
You was just cracking the whip with one of our friends before we got on. Like, yeah, so-and-so is about to, do an investment property. He need a wife.
He need to get him a wife. And I'm going to text him after this and let him know.
We ain't going to name no names. I don't want no trouble. I don't want no trouble.
You're right.
So look, we're gonna hop into this thing, Robin. Again, thank you for joining us. And we're just so excited to have this conversation as well with you. So just let the people know who you are and what you do, just like a brief bio and background about you.
So I don't know if you all, never mind, I know the answer to this. You guys get introduced a lot. And so when I'm out speaking somewhere and somebody is reading my bio, it is the most awkward moment ever.
Yes.
Back in the day, I'm gonna date myself real quick. Back in the day, the Calgon commercial, Calgon, will you take me away? Whenever somebody's reading my bio, I just feel like Calgon, take me away, because your bio presents all the good stuff about you, and it just lays everything out, and people can get a perception. And I want people to know, I'm about to tell you about myself. I'm gonna do it myself. But I want you to know I am just like everybody else. I'm trying to figure this thing out. I'm trying to navigate these waters. I'm trying to deal with a 13-year-old who got a 13-year-old attitude, an 11-year-old who has middle child syndrome, and a 6-year-old who thinks the world revolves around her. I'm trying to support a husband who is the biggest visionary I have ever met in all of my life. And somehow God has taken this big visionary man and connected him with a woman who is afraid of risk. So know that about me. Okay. I'm afraid of risk. And then he connects us. And so I'm trying to not squash my husband's dreams and then live out my own. So I share that because I think people need to know that those of us who are doing things in the community, we are just like everybody else, and we're trying to figure it out. So with that in mind, with that disclaimer, I am a licensed therapist, a professional counselor. I am a certified life coach. And what those two things mean is basically I have committed my professional life to helping people navigate the tough terrain of their own life. I do that every single day. Therapy and coaching, I like to say, are cousins, but they are not the same thing. And so I help people navigate life in the counseling realm. And in the coaching realm, what I'm helping them to do is to identify where it is they're trying to go, and then tell them what are the things that are hindering them from getting there. And so that's what I do professionally. I also have what I call a 2-lane highway. Now, both of you guys are in the entertainment industry, and you know that when you have a lot of different things you're doing, it's hard to communicate that. And I don't know about y'all, but I've been giving advice for years. You got to narrow down. You got to narrow down. But when you are equally passionate, it is hard to do that. And so I have what I call a 2-lane highway. I am committed to empowering women, and I want women to walk in the fullness of what God has called them to do. I want women to live out their purpose, and I want to help them understand that stuff in particular that stops us. So that's one lane. The other lane, I'm committed to empowering and equipping couples, particularly married couples. Now, listen, let me tell y'all how crazy it is. I can be in the grocery store. I can be in Target. I can be in the dollar store, and I can overhear a couple arguing. And if my husband is with me, he has to tell me, baby, do not go get in their business. I'm asking you for any help, because I truly believe if you just give me 15 minutes with you. Just give me 15 minutes.
Right. We can fix this.
I can help you. He didn't mean that. She didn't mean that. So that's what I do. And then in addition to all of that, my husband and I launched a church just under 3 years ago. In September, it'll be 3 years. And so I partner with him in leading Transforming Faith Church. And I have a particular interest in combining ministry and mental health, because I have found people throw out, I'm going to pray about it, or they tell you to pray about it, but you can pray all day long. You can run around the church. You can speak in tongues, and you can go lay at the altar. But if you don't get up and deal with your stuff, that stuff is still going to be right there. And so I want to help people understand mental health and ministry. And so that's what I do. That's me in a nutshell.
That's good. That's good. So I got a whole bunch of questions already. I'm trying not to dominate the time, and some of this might be self-help for me, but then some of this just be for everybody else. I appreciate that. What is, or Robin, answer this for me. Is it just Black folks, or is it everybody? I feel like it's Black folks, but I only have a Black experience in my life. So is it just Black folks that have an aversion to seeking professional help?
I think generally I'd have to say no. It is not just African-American folk, but that's generally. But I will say that Black folk I have found, have a greater hurdle to jump in seeking help. And it's basically, a lot of it is cultural, because y'all can finish this sentence for me. What happens in this house
stays in this house.
Stays in this house. And that's what we were taught. So that's number one, okay? Then number two, can I go ahead and keep it real? The second thing is, we definitely were not going to go talk to somebody that didn't look like us. So I'm sure not going to leave. If I'm going to go talk to somebody, I'm going to go talk to some. And the reality is, to this day, in Atlanta, Georgia, I still have Black folks who come into my office and say, "You're Black." Like, they still are surprised that they have a Black therapist. And so you have that hurdle to jump over. And then here's the third hurdle. And I'm saying this as a preacher's wife, as a woman who preaches herself. In our culture, we're told, go talk to your mama or go talk to the preacher. And those things have hindered our ability. And then the reality is just the resources, the ability to go see somebody. And so I see all kind of people. I don't just see African Americans. I see all kind of people. And there are a lot of people who are hesitant to get treatment. But I think our hurdles are very unique.
It's interesting you say that, because I was actually talking to a friend, and they were saying how these preachers are supposed to be all these things, but never trained in these things that they're supposed to handle for people. And so they end up giving out horrible advice, just like Jesus will fix it, and just go and pray and spin around 7 times. And of course, tithe extra 5% because you ain't tithing hard enough. That's why your blessing ain't there, and
exactly.
end up in a worse position. So how do we kind of steer them back so they can see the benefits of therapy and licensed professional assistant?
So I don't want to step on the toes of these pastors, including Pastor C Dog. I don't want to. I don't want to step on the toes of pastors, including C Dog and my husband. But Chris, literally, let me give you a virtual offering, because that is one of my things. Like, first of all, let's just say this. Culturally, again, pastors have carried a very heavy weight. If we just look back culturally, we just look over our history, the Black pastor had a significant role. And I believe that that role is still very significant. But I believe the burden that was placed on pastors, now, hindsight is 2020, we can look and see that that burden was probably unfair, because he was or unrealistic would be a better word, because he was expected to be all things to all people at all time. And that's how we get into the challenge of our pastors being placed on a pedestal that is unhealthy. That's how we get into the problem of the pastoral gift being elevated higher than other gifts. And so in order to alleviate that or to adjust that, I believe the onus is on the pastor to be able to put people in place who are trained to do what he or she is not trained to do. Therapy and counseling is a specific training. Now, I believe every pastor should take some type of biblical counseling class, for sure, because there are just some basic things that you need to know. But every pastor needs to be able to say, and I'm speaking to all the pastors out there, and I'm talking to all the parishioners, so you can humbly tell your pastor. Every pastor needs to be able to say, listen, this is beyond my capacity. I've been doing therapy for almost 15 years, and there are still times that people will come in to see me, and I will tell them, this is beyond my capacity, and I'm trained. Wow. And so I think it's just the realization that we have to shift that. And so let me tell the people who are viewing why therapy is so important, because I believe everybody needs a therapist, everybody. What therapy offers you is this. Number one, a no judgment zone. I don't care how much your mama loves you. I don't care how much your best friend loves you. There's gonna be some type of judgment in that they want you to go a certain way. They are invested in where you're going. So what therapy provides, if you get the right therapist, is it's a no judgment zone. This is an opportunity for you just to be. The second thing it provides for you is confidentiality. I tell my clients all the time, I pay my mortgage by keeping your secrets. And so it offers you confidentiality. And then the third thing, that I can just speak for me as a therapist, I offer my clients a mirror. Now that's why it's hard to work with me in therapy, because I offer you a mirror. I am a mirror to reflect back to you what you're giving off without a dog in the fight. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not invested in if you go here, if you go here. So I can tell you the truth about how you're showing up. Because how you show up in the therapy office is more than likely a microcosm of how you're showing up in real life. So number one, it provides you a no judgment zone. Number two, it gives you confidentiality. You can keep it all the way real. And then number three, it helps you to see you.
Man, hey Chris, I'm gonna let you know right now, this finna be good. Like this gonna be a real good conversation. I'm just saying. I am just saying. So Robin, because one thing I've learned, and I've been pastoring now for 3 full years, going in 4, and I've totally learned that there is a difference between coaching and counseling. And you gave a little bit of how give me, what is the true difference between coaching someone and counseling someone?
Well, let's go back and just, first of all, I want to explain the field and where it shows up differently. So it is, you can get in trouble calling yourself a therapist if you're not a licensed therapist, right? Because it is governed by the Secretary of State. This field of counseling is governed by the Secretary of State. And what that means is there are some qualifications, there are some check marks, there's some things that you had to do to be able to say you have this license. Can I tell you, I'm putting myself out there on this virtual call, but I was telling my husband, every 2 years, we have to get continued education courses, and then and you submit those for September or whatever. And I was thinking, whoo, I got some time because I'm sure they've adjusted it because of COVID. You're not gonna have, no, they're like, no, you will be getting your continued education courses because that's somebody watching to make sure that you are up to date on your skills. So that's in counseling. Let me tell you the difference with coaching. Anybody can call themselves a coach. You don't have to get a certification. You don't have to get trained. Anybody can call themselves a coach. Now, I personally went and got certified. I'd be happy to tell you about the program, but I personally went to go get certified because I know Black folk. And I know Black folk want to know, well, how you going to be able to tell me something, right? So I went and I got certified. Now, let me tell you this, Corin, because this is important. It is not necessarily a bad thing that anybody can call themselves a coach. Let me break it down to you like this. If you had a professor of economics and then you had a self-made millionaire and you wanted to know, how do I make $1 million? More than likely, you're going to go to the self-made millionaire, even though they don't have the educational background, because you want the real deal experience. So a coach, like I would love to speak to a woman who can tell me, Robin, I lost 30 pounds and this is how I lost those 30. Come coach me. I don't care what your certification is. Tell me what you did, right? So that's the difference in coaching. Now there is an International Coaching Federation, but again, anybody can call themselves a coach. So to answer your question, Corin, what's the difference? Often in counseling, I'm dealing with traumas from the past or things from your past, even if it hasn't rose to the level of a trauma. I'm dealing with things from your past that are hindering you today, one thing. Number two, I'm often dealing with mental illness when I'm dealing with counseling. Some people are dealing with drug and alcohol abuse when they're dealing with counseling. So it's often the things that are hindering you and holding you back that have come from past or traumatic situations that you're dealing with now that are keeping you stuck. In coaching, my goal is to help you move forward. I'm trying to figure out what is goal oriented. What is your goal? And what are the things that's keeping you from jumping these hurdles so that I can help you move forward? So the beautiful thing about this is that sometimes in my counseling, I put on my coaching hat. Does that make sense? Because I'm trying to help you move forward. I have clients who see me as their therapist and they have a life coach and vice versa. So they are like, that's why I said they're cousins, but they're not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not go see somebody for therapy who hasn't been trained.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Woo! All right. I'm excited. I mean, especially I guess too as a pastor and all the people, because I've learned in the last year, like there is a total difference between coaching and counseling. And there's many times where I realized, and I've told people, I'm coaching you. Like I'm helping you to get to where you want to be, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's a whole different thing. So I really love that. And I think too, it's just so important because some people just don't know how to get over those hurdles. It's not they don't have the tools or the mental capacity. They just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the reason why I said it's okay to acknowledge when something is beyond your capacity, because one of the things that is I would say a professional pet peeve of mine is this, and this is where the training comes in. Y'all both know me, we've known each other for many years. I am a very opinionated person. I have very strong opinions, and in private circles, I have no problem giving all my opinions. But what happens in a counseling setting, and many times in a coaching setting, we have to be very careful that as we are helping people navigate through their life, that we're helping them based on principle, not based on preference. Because the principle is what changes things, not the preference. The preference is how Robin wants to do it. And so often when you're scrolling through social media and you see experts sharing what needs to be done, they are just telling you their preference. They might even be telling you what worked for them, but they haven't gotten to the root of what the principle is. Let me give you an example. I am a woman of faith, and I believe that in marriage, faith is critically important. I believe having an intimate relationship with God is critically important. But if I'm talking to a couple and I tell them, listen, you're married, you need to be praying, and you need to get up every morning at 6 a.m. and you need to be praying at 6 a.m. Well, see, now I'm getting tricky because I'm taking them into preference. That's what me and my husband might want to do. We might want to pray at 6 a.m. That's not the principle. The principle is prayer. How you do it is the preference. And so what often happens with leaders, whether they're pastoral leaders, whether it is somebody who has not been trained, they are preaching their preference and they're not preaching the principle.
You might have said something there. So you talked about how, you know, we kind of shy away from the truth. We shy away from like what we're dealing with. And just the honest, you know, to keep it 100, we're traumatized. Like, it's a lot going on. We battle against a lot on a daily basis. How do we acknowledge that trauma and start dealing with the trauma, especially with the landscape that we're dealing with today, just to be honest with ourselves?
Well, I believe this, self-reflection is highly missing with many of us. And in many ways, I understand why. We're trying to make it, right? We're busy trying to make life happen. Let's just go even before the pandemic. You're just trying to make sure that the bills are getting paid. You're trying to make sure your kid is well-rounded. Or kids are well-rounded. Your mama might be sick. You're trying to take care of her. Your boss is, so you got all this going on. And so then when you hear somebody like me, because my platform, what I beat the drum on all the time is self-awareness. And so you hear somebody like me talking about self-awareness, and we can get into that because it's key to marriage, it's key to friendships, it's key to coworkers, but I'll get into that in a minute. And so you hear me beating the drum and you feel like, I ain't got time for that because I'm trying to make life happen. Then you add on to that a world pandemic, where even if COVID isn't hitting you personally, like even if nobody in your family has got hit from it, it is still impacting your life. And then, so I did a video on Instagram the other day where I had a cup and I was pouring water into it. And I was just talking about the fact that at some point you're going to be at capacity, because then you add the racial tensions that we're dealing with. Listen, and I'm saying this to two brothers, and I'm saying this to all the men who might watch this. My husband has to hear it all the time as well, even for my brothers and definitely for my sisters. Your soul can only carry so much. Your soul can only carry so much. This is the way I like to explain it. If you get on an elevator and you look on the elevator, you'll see that it says that this elevator can only carry this much weight. Right. An engineer came out and tested how much weight can be on the elevator. You can try to test it if you want to. You can try to push past that if you want to, but it could be very dangerous for you. Well, it's the same thing for you, Chris. It's the same for you, Corin. It's the same for anybody watching. We have a capacity, and it's up to you to slow your life down long enough and be honest when you are at capacity. Often, the people around you can tell when you're at capacity before you can. I can say, y'all know Lee, y'all know my husband, and y'all know he lives at 5. Clearly, I live 10, and he lives at 5. He stays right here all the time. I can tell when he's at capacity, when he's snapping very easily, because he's so even-tempered. So when he's snapping at any little thing, I know he's at capacity. If I come in the house, we went through, y'all know our journey, we went through a very tough time politically, and if I come in the house, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and he's in that bed asleep, homeboy is at capacity. So you got to know when you're at capacity. I know when I'm at capacity, I get this really bad pain in my left shoulder blade. So it is very important that we slow our life down enough to know when we're at capacity, because can I tell you the dangerous part? If you don't do it, you're going to be responding in ways that could have long-term impact, and it's going to be hard to repair. So for your wives, for your husbands, for your children, for your own well-being, we have to be honest about when we are carrying too much. It is nothing honorable about carrying beyond your capacity. There's nothing honorable about that.
Man, this might be we might have to have every third Thursday with Robin. So tell me this, because I've heard this more than once. So in this season, and me and Jessica went through it. You know, my wife is an extrovert. I'm kind of more like Lee. I'm on level 5. She on 22. And this season for her is wrecking her. Like, she doesn't have the people. She doesn't get her love filled by people. You know, I can only give so much. And this is the first time in our marriage of 16 years that we've ever been in the house this long together.
Yes.
You know, and so it has really been a roller coaster. And so, like, I don't even know what I'm asking necessarily, but how do couples navigate, you know, I think this season of Corona together?
I want to validate that for you, and I want to acknowledge that for you, Corin, because, you know, y'all heard the term that says misery loves company. And we try to shy away from that, but I love the term. I just like to switch it up a little bit, because it's not necessarily that we want other people to be miserable. It's just that we want to know we're not crazy. We just want somebody to let us know, listen, we just needed to be validated. You're not crazy. You're not losing your, this is the case. Y'all know my saying, I don't play when it comes to Lee May. I love me some Lee May. That's, nobody ever has to question. I love me some Lee May. But even me and Lee May, in this house all day, every day. It's like this, right? And so I want, because you're sharing that freely, Corin, but I want to say to you and anybody else watching, being in this, again, carrying the emotional weight of this, even if you don't realize that it's impacting you, and then being in a place where you can't have the type of freedom, for lack of a better word, that you're used to, does create challenges. So, Corin, what's funny is Lee and I people would be surprised to know he's more of the extrovert than me. I refuel by being by myself. So let me tell you, we go into a restaurant, and we were out of town because, you know, my husband's a famous commercial guy now. He's been in the commercial. But we go to Florida to shoot this commercial, and we go into a restaurant. And this really stood out to me. Lee and I've been married 18 years, but this moment just stood out to me. Going to the restaurant, and one side of the restaurant is just packed. It's a whole bunch of people. The other side of the restaurant was empty. It was maybe one person over there. So we go in, and I said, let's go over there where there was nobody, because that's what I want, because I refuel by being. Lee was like, no, let's go over there where all the people are. Because he walks into a room, because, you know, him and Chris are Line brothers. They walk into the room and they own the room. I walk into the room and I got to assess first. And so we are very different in that way. And so one of the things I would tell couples during this time, I've been giving several strategies. Number one, the first thing couples need to do is to have the conversation, because a lot of times people get their feelings hurt. So it's to have the conversation. Look, babe, how can we outline our time so that you can have time to yourself, I can have time to myself, and then we can have our couples time. Y'all got to have the conversation. The second thing that's so important, and Corin, your kids are a little bit older, but this is very important for those who have children. You have got to revisit your roles and responsibilities. You've got to revisit your roles and responsibilities. Very quickly, I'm going to drop this very quickly. There are 5 things that show up as challenges for couples. 5 things for every couple. At some point, you're going to deal with one of these 5. Let me see if I can remember off the top of my head. 1 is challenges or how you raise children. 2 is finances. 3 is how you deal with leisure time, like how you handle your leisure time. 4 is outside influences. Now, back in the day, they used to just say in-laws, but I believe it's outside influences, period. Yes. You know, just people influencing you. And the 5th one is roles and responsibilities. Y'all, that's huge, because if you don't talk through how we handle the roles and responsibilities, so Corin, what y'all did pre-corona is different from how you handle roles and responsibilities in the midst of corona. So number one, y'all need to have the conversation. Number two, you need to revisit roles and responsibilities. And then the third thing that I would say is that you and your spouse have to make sure that you are doing things intentional to invest in one another. So Chris, you and I have talked about this many times. Y'all can stop me on this because y'all know when you get me talking about marriage, I'll go on and on. But in marriage, there is no such thing as standing still. There's no such thing. Right. You're either drawing closer together or you're pulling further apart. I like to say it like this. You're either making deposits or you're making withdrawals. And that's just human nature. And so the goal is to make sure you make more deposits so that when you make a withdrawal, you're not going into overdraft. The withdrawal can be something as simple as you snapped on me and because you were at capacity. Well, if we have enough deposits in that love tank, if there are enough deposits that when you snap on me, I might be in my feelings, but I'm not shut down. And so during this coronavirus, ain't that what Cardi B said? During this coronavirus, during this pandemic, you need to make sure you're making enough deposits. But it goes back to my first part of my conversation. What do deposits look like to you, Corin? Because that's different from what it looks like for Jessica.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to make sure you're having the conversation. For me, the deposit, for Lee and I, the deposit is for us to sit over here on this couch and look at a show together. You've made a deposit. And so you guys have to have that conversation and say what that looks like.
I want to stay there because you said something that was, key when you said making deposits and filling up your tank. But if you're at capacity, how are you able to kind of empty the cup to kind of get back to where you normally can function and operate? Like, what are some techniques for us to be able to like shed some of those things and keep it moving?
Okay, so I love that you asked that. One of the things that I want to say, first of all, is iron sharpens iron. And that's important for us to understand in marriage because your partner, your spouse should be your first go-to. So like one of the things, y'all know I know Chris, you know this, I teach a class called the roommate zone, helping couples avoid the roommate zone.
Okay.
And the roommate zone is when you and your spouse are living in the same house together, but you're not doing life together. You're making life happen, but you're not doing it together. And one of the things I talk about in that roommate zone is this, that you have to know when the two of you are headed toward that. And one of the ways you can know that is if your partner isn't the first person you want to go to when tough times are hard or when times are good. That's an indication. If the person you're with is not the first person you want to run to when you have good news, or if the person you're with isn't the first person you want to run to when things get hard, that could possibly, again, I'm not going to make it all the way, but from what I have found, that could possibly be an indication, there might be something going on. I know for me that I can tell when Lee and I are and I want to say this, I don't care how happy you are, you're either going toward, you can find, it's very easy to find yourself in the roommate zone or coming out the roommate zone. So I want to normalize that. And so I can tell when Lee and I are not good because something will happen and I want to call my sister before I want to call him. And that's not the norm for us, right? And so, or I can tell when he coughs, he can cough and he knows it too. When we're not good, he coughing and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like every little thing he does annoys me. Okay, so that's an indication to me. So Chris, I'm coming to answer your question because iron sharpens iron. And if you and your partner, you and your spouse are not holding one another accountable and you can't tell one another the truth, that's an area of growth for your marriage. Why do I say that? Because often you may not know that you're at capacity. Your spouse is the one who often can tell. But if you don't trust your partner's insight, that's a challenge, okay? So the first thing is to answer how do you begin to empty it? So I wish I had a cup in front of me, but if this was a cup And how do I empty it if I'm at capacity? Number one is I have to acknowledge it. And many times my partner is the person who can help me acknowledge it. The second thing I would tell you is if you know you're getting at capacity, you have to be very careful of what you're taking in. Remember, we can only carry so much. And so you got to be careful how much CNN you're taking in. You got to be careful how much you're scrolling through social media. You got to be careful of how many times you watch the video of somebody being murdered. Because all that is doing is adding to what your soul is carrying. So number one, you have to acknowledge. Number two, you have to make sure that you're watching what you're taking in. Number three, you got to get your toolkit up. You got to get your toolkit up. What is your toolkit? What are the things that help you be happy? What are the things that helps you feel better? You have to know what that is. It is your responsibility. If you got to write it down. So again, I know for me, having some time by myself fills me up. Having some quiet time with my husband helps me. Just sitting on the floor playing jacks with my daughter helps me. My husband goes for a run. I don't know why, but he'll go run 10 miles. That does something for him. So you have to get your toolkit up. What are the things that you do to help you begin to release? And that's why I go back to, Chris, you got to slow your life down long enough to know what those things are. And most of us stay running on empty, and we defend that dysfunction. That's dysfunctional. And we defend that dysfunctional because I'm grinding, I'm going hard. But in the meantime, your family is paying the cost. In the meantime, you're not available to people. So you got to learn how to slow your life down long enough to assess where you are, how your soul is, and do the things necessary to adjust. And here's the last tip I would give. One of the things I've been teaching my clients is what I call your re-entry. So we've all, Corinne, you and I were talking about how you guys are going to start with pastoring our church, is trying to figure out how we're going to start our re-entry plan. You're trying to figure out how you're going to do the re-entry plan for school. But I want everybody watching, what is your re-entry plan at the end of every day? Because we got to have some very clear boundaries from when work starts, when work stops, and then when I'm engaging with things outside of work. And that's very hard when we're all at home. So I'm on counseling sessions having to give my child the eye when you dare open that door, right? And so we have to have a re-entry plan. What do you do to cut work off and enter your home life? What is your daily re-entry plan? It can be as simple as, for 5 minutes, you listen to Tupac, Chris. It can be 5 minutes where you're just still. It can be 5 minutes where you do a little yoga. You got to figure out what is your re-entry plan, because that's how you make sure you're dumping all that stuff that you're carrying.
That's a word. That is a word. So you probably, all these are probably for my marriage right now. So you marriage counseling. I send you the check after we get off. But something my wife told me, and I feel like I've had conversations with some other friends, like this has been a very hard season for Black men. And my wife, she finally, I don't want to say finally, but she admitted to me, I don't feel what you feel. And I don't know what to give you in this time. And I was very appreciative of it. Like, I was grateful that she was able to say that. But also, we were still stuck, though. And, like, just not even knowing, like, so for other men, like, who are struggling in this time, and for women, like, how can wives come alongside their husbands in this season?
So you're going to be surprised my answer to this, because y'all know me. But one of the things I have found, and again, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not dishonoring my own statement, preference versus principle. And so I'm going to clarify it by saying this works for Lee. Many times, he just needs me to leave him alone for a little bit. Like one of the things I can do for him is just let him be. Just give him his space. Because while I live on 10 and he lives on 5, how that often plays out is this is me all day. Just a talking. I just talk, as you can tell, everybody on here probably is like, yeah, we can tell. And so what often helps him is for me to intentionally give him his space. But I'm gonna tell you this, and as I'm thinking about this, it stood out. If y'all want me to, we can get into the conversation of what it means to have a safe space in your marriage and in relationships, period. But the reason I know that is because he's told me that. Because see, what's dangerous is when you hold somebody accountable to something you haven't told them.
Right.
You can't hold me accountable to something you ain't told me. So he's communicated to me. Now I had to create the space for him to feel comfortable to say that to me. So I'm gonna talk to my ladies for a minute. All my ladies who are watching, I've had the honor and the privilege to partner with men in their marriage for a long time. And I'm just gonna tell you what I have heard across the board. Now, I'm not telling you ladies that this is the case for you. I'm just gonna tell you what has been common. Men have told me, including my man, we've been married 18 years, together 26 years. He'll text me in a minute and tell me if it's been 26 or 27. But what they have told me is that often they don't communicate what they're really feeling is because they feel like they're trying to avoid landmines. They're trying to dodge landmines. If I say that, she's gonna pop off. If I say that, she's gonna go off. If I say that, it's gonna upset her. If I say that, I'm not gonna get none. And so I told you I'm gonna keep it real. So they're trying to avoid landmines, ladies. And so we're wondering why they're not talking. But when they do talk, we shut them down. I'll make it personal for me. When he would talk, I would shut him down. I would tell him he wasn't right in what he was saying, or that ain't what it really is. And so I had to learn to create the space. Now listen, I don't give men a pass, because I go hard with the fellas too. I'm just telling you ladies what I have heard across the board. And what I've discovered on my journey, if more than 2 people are saying it, if more than 5 people are saying it, it's worth paying attention to. It doesn't mean that it's the law, but it's worth paying attention to. And when I discovered that, I came to my husband and apologized, quite frankly. And I asked him, is that his reality? And he was able to admit, yeah, because again, he wants it to be peaceful at all times. And so he was able to tell me that. So Corinne, to answer your question, I have found in my marriage, 1, giving my husband the space to be. Number 2, when I say this word, I'm saying this just because it's the word that's coming to my mind, but I don't mean it strictly. But giving him the permission to connect with his boys when he needs to. Now, I'm being careful with that word permission, because I ain't got to give my man permission to do nothing. He does whatever he wants to do. And look, he ain't got to give me permission to do nothing either. But when I say permission, I'm saying, well, he ain't got to hear my mouth. He know he's not going to have to deal with the backlash. Now, I got something to say about that. The reason I feel free to do that is because the men my husband chooses to be around are men that I know walk in integrity. Now, that might not be the case for everybody, but I'm going to say, I know men do good when they're around other men. And there are certain things that only men can understand. And so I stepped back. Just this past week, we had some t-shirts made for the fellas at the church. It was Father's Day weekend. So we had shirts made for all the men, because Coleman, to your point, I wish I had the shirt in front of me, it's been tough for men. So we got them shirts made with our church logo on the front, and on the back it said #don't make me a hashtag. And so we got these shirts made. And so I told my husband, I was like, babe, so all the ladies are gonna get together and I'm gonna have them come up to the office and we're gonna present the shirts to y'all, and y'all can come by the office and get the shirt. And he was like, no, we're not gonna do that. Don't worry about it, just pack the shirts up and we'll just have some time for the fellas, right? And that wasn't my vision.
Right.
That wasn't my vision, Corin, but I said, you know what? Let me step back, because there's something that men need for other men.
That's good. That's so good, Robin. That is amazing. Robin, we running. This is good. I could really go on.
I can't believe
But
we just got 10 minutes.
I know, Lee did hit us up and say it's 27 years, just to let you know.
Oh, it's 27 years.
So tell us a little bit.
27 years.
27 years. Tell us a little bit about your shirt.
Oh, happy is my best accessory. So I told you guys I have this 2-lane highway empowering women and equipping couples. And one of the things I have found, particularly for church ladies, for some reason, we think it's something wrong with just being happy. Like, because what you say in church is, God ain't worried about your happiness. He just wants you to have joy. Well, I think I can have both. I think I can be happy and have joy. And so I'm taking women in the next couple of weeks on this journey of finding or defining what happy means to them. So Corin and Chris, I'm gonna give you an assignment. Y'all can just text me later. I want you just to ask your wife, what is she happy? Just ask her, is she happy? I'm gonna tell you, women have such a hard time answering that question. And so I have these shirts called Happy is My Best Accessory, because there's nothing like a woman who just feels good. It's not like, listen, it just changes your whole countenance. It just draws people to you. So I'm taking women on this journey called Define Your Happy. And if anybody wants to participate, we don't start till July 6th. And you just go to defineyourhappy.com. And I just think it's going to be a huge momentum shift. Because let me tell y'all this might shock you. There is this whole scientific idea of happiness, and the scientists have found that 50% of your happiness is genetics, which is crazy to me. 50%. Then only 10% are your circumstances. What your house is looking like, what your finances are. It's just 10%. So now we're at 60%. So the question is, what's that other 40%? And that's not just for ladies, this is for everybody. What's that other 40%? It's how you think about your situation. So if I can challenge the way you think, I'm gonna give this to y'all very free because y'all didn't ask me this, but I'm gonna go here. Your feelings, what you feel is not right. What you feel is not wrong. It's just there to give you some information. And if we can learn that your feelings are just there, you feel angry, you feel sad, you feel disappointed, you feel jealous. It's just there to give you some information. It's like opening up an envelope. You open up the envelope and you study it. It's your thoughts that impact what you do. So if you can challenge, if 40% of my happiness is based on the way I'm thinking, maybe I can change how I'm thinking and I can change what I'm experiencing. And I believe that requires somebody helping you on that journey.
Oh, that's so good. Because I often believe too, we got there because our parents and their parents weren't taught that.
Yes, exactly. I talk a lot about one of the things people always tell me, particularly in marriage, again, they sit on my couch and they say, Robin, my spouse and I, we just can't seem to communicate. And I have found that communication isn't the issue, actually. It's really your connection, and that's a whole nother conversation. But when we talk about communication, I'm telling y'all what I have found, to your point, Corin, is that it's often passed down. Like, y'all know how we have different things that are passed down genetically, our DNA. The women in your family might all be tall. The women in your family might all have thick thighs. The men in your family might be short. They might be tall. It's just kind of the bloodline. I have found, y'all, it's the same thing with how we communicate. Often, how we communicate, how we connect, and then according to your point, even how we think has been passed down genetically, or not necessarily genetically, but along those lines.
Right,
and if you never pause, again, to challenge what you've always known, what you've always done, what you've always experienced, if you never pause to challenge it, you're just continuing a generational mindset that's keeping you stuck. Listen, and it's hard to challenge that, but the reality is my mama wants me to be better than her. I want my daughters to be better than me. And so you got to challenge it. Let me tell you this story real quick and then I'll stop, I promise. There's this story about a mother who was cooking dinner with her daughter. and the mother cut off the front and the back of the roast and put it in the pot and then put it in the oven. So her daughter was watching the mother do this, and the daughter said, "Mama, why did you cut off the front and the back?" And the mama said, "I don't know, that's what my mama always did. Go call your grandmother." So the daughter called her grandmother, and she said, "Grandmama, why mama cut off the front and the back of the roast, put it in the pot and put it in the oven?" The grandmother said, "Child, I don't know, thank God your great-grandmother is still alive. Call her and ask her." The daughter called the great-grandmother. The great-grandmother said, "We didn't have pots big enough to fit the pot roast." So here you are passing down the generation to cut off the front and cut off the back, but now we got pots big enough. And so the reality is we're doing things that mama and them did, and mama and them did it to survive. We don't have to do the same thing. But if you don't pause long enough to evaluate everything you're doing, every way you're showing up in your marriage, every way you're showing up at work, everywhere you're showing up with your friends, if you don't pause and evaluate it, ask yourself the tough questions, go to therapy so your therapist can challenge you. If you don't do that, you're passing on generational mindsets that could be hindering you.
Hey, man.
I'm going to stop real quick.
No, that is so good. That is so good. It reminds me like it's a story that, when we were in our premarital class, Jessica and I remember this guy, his mother died. And so his father didn't want to date while his son was young. And so, or he didn't want him to see him just date other women.
Yeah.
And so he goes on and he waits till his son gets out the house. And then he had a woman that he was actually kicking it with while they was, and he marries her, and great, ends up being a great marriage and all of that. But what the guy said was the thing that he ended up missing out on because his mother passed and his father didn't date was he never got to see his father love a woman.
Wow.
And that even it says we don't even think about all the things that we pass down or the things that we don't pass down.
Exactly. Like, so let me tell y'all, and again, this is why we come up with these conclusions. This is the reason why I love the work I do, because I help people challenge the assumptions and the conclusions that they're coming to about their life. And let me tell you this quick story. So we have 3 daughters, as you know, and my middle baby is a gymnast. Now, you're looking at the Texas State Floor Champion at 12 years old. I was the Texas State Floor Champion at 12 years old, okay? And so gymnastics is in my blood. I love gymnastics. So keep in mind, my middle baby did gymnastics. Well, my oldest daughter was doing competitive swim. I barely can swim. And so one day, my daughter Ryan would have these swim meets. We'd be outside, it'd be hot, just miserable. And I don't know how to hold in my misery, but I would just suck it up and I'd be out there. Well, fast forward, y'all, we're at a gymnastics meet with Reagan. Lee was not there for what he had been there. He had to leave because it was a little bit out of town and we were spending the night at a hotel. So Ryan turns to me, the meet is over and it's time for the award ceremony. Now that can take another hour and a half, right? So Ryan turns to me and she says, "Mommy, I don't want to stay for the award ceremony. Can we just go back to the hotel room and come back and get Reagan?" So I felt like that was so mean. I said, "Ryan, what? Why don't you want to stay?" She was like, "I just don't feel like this." She was like, "I don't want to stay." And I said, "Ryan, that's so mean. We go to your swim meets. It's hot. We're sweating. Reagan never complains." And Ryan said this. She said, can I tell you the truth? Because I always tell her, if you want to tell me the truth, you got to have a good attitude. And I said, "Yeah, you can tell me." And she said, "The only reason why you want to stay at the gym meet is because you love gymnastics." She said, "You don't love swimming." Now watch this. This is the part that's going to trip you out. She said, "And we never stay for my award ceremony for swimming. We never stay. We always leave before the award ceremony. But we never miss Reagan's award ceremony. And I know that's because you really like gymnastics." Let me tell y'all the reason why that's a trip. They did not have award ceremonies for the swim meets. There was no award ceremony. they handed everybody their ribbons at the next practice. Ryan had come to the conclusion that she wasn't getting her ribbons at the award ceremony because we didn't want to stay. She had never said that to us, but she had come to that conclusion. So she began to tell herself a story that her mama was more into Reagan than she was into her, that I was more into what Reagan was into than I was into what she was into. Let me tell you why that's dangerous. Because she was 10 at that time. And just imagine if she continued with that story, then the enemy would have gave her another story. And then she would have been 20 years old with these ideas in her head about her mom and her daddy. And then the wrong little boy could come and whisper the wrong little thing in her head to support that story. So my point is, how many times as grown women, as grown men, have we come to some conclusions, some ideas, some perspectives that are not even rooted in the truth, but we've never taken time to challenge it. Yeah. And so we're continuing on a path that's not even rooted in the truth. If I'm going to trip out, at least let me trip out on the truth, not on some story I done told myself.
Yeah, that's so good. Woo! Robin, tell these people where they can find you at.
You can follow me on social media at Robin May Online across the board. You can go to my website, robinmayonline.com.
That was so, you gave all of those great answers. These are like real quick, Robin May Online. Look, Robin, sister, 27 years in, we love you. We cherish you. I don't think that you're highlighted enough, just out loud, just even this conversation. I forgot how dope you are. Like, you know it, but then you have the conversation like, dang, this is crazy. So we just really want to say thank you, sister, for honoring us with your time and your thousands of dollars worth of therapy that you gave us and Facebook for free. So we can continue to help our community. And you definitely deserve to have the Holla spotlight shined on you today, sis.
Thank you, y'all. I love y'all. Thank you for having, I think I was the first lady, huh?
Yeah.
Yes, you were.
Tantrum. There it is.
Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate y'all. And I believe in this work, and I think it's going to go so far.
Thank you, sis. And again, y'all check out Robin May Online. And we will see you later on the next Holla Spotlight.
Holla Spotlight. Peace.
Shut it!